You know, we've all seen those headlines, right? Some big, flashy scientific breakthrough. But have you ever really stopped and wondered, wait, how did they actually figure that out? And how do we know it's legit? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain. We're going to follow the entire journey of a single scientific idea, from a really complex question all the way to your screen.
So where does any scientific journey begin? It starts with a question. And for our journey today, we are tackling one of the biggest mysteries of all. What is going on inside the human brain? To help us navigate all that complexity, we're going to follow the trail of one specific condition, just to see exactly how scientists investigate, how they validate their findings, and ultimately how they share that knowledge with the world.
And our guide for this journey is ADHD. Now, the formal definition talks about challenges with inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. And those are the symptoms we can see on the outside. But the real scientific mystery, the question that drives the research, is what's actually happening inside the brain to cause them.
Okay, first things first. Before we can even peek inside the brain, we need to get a sense of the scale of this puzzle. See, ADHD isn't some rare fringe condition. It's a global reality. And its prevalence is a huge reason why understanding its biology is just so critical. Just think about this for a second. Around the world, somewhere between 5 and 7% of all kids and teenagers are living with ADHD. That number alone makes it one of the most common neurodevelopmental disorders that we know of. It's everywhere.
And this is not something people just grow out of. For many, the condition persists, affecting roughly 2.5% of the entire adult population. This lifelong nature is a massive motivator for scientists who are trying to understand its fundamental impact on the brain.
All right, so we get the scale of it. It's common and it's persistent. That brings us to the next phase, the investigation. So what are the biological clues? Well, decades of research have started to build a really compelling picture of what the ADHD brain looks like.
So where do scientists even begin to look for clues? Well, a lot of the time, the investigation starts with our genes. With a heritability rate of 70 to 80%, I mean, wow. ADHD is one of the most genetically linked psychiatric conditions there is, and that is a massive clue, telling researchers that the blueprint for this condition is likely written right into our DNA.
And you know, those genetic clues often lead scientists right here, to the brain's chemical messaging systems. Two key players really stand out: dopamine, which is crucial for things like reward and motivation, and norepinephrine, which helps govern our alertness and attention. A huge body of research is telling us that in the ADHD brain, the regulation of these critical chemicals just works a little differently.
And it's not just brain chemistry. With modern brain scans, we can actually see subtle but measurable physical differences. Think of it like this. It's like comparing two really complex computers. In kids with ADHD, scientists have found differences in the wiring, the circuits that connect the brain's executive control center to other regions, and even in the size of some of the components deep inside. Now, these aren't massive changes, but they are consistent patterns.
Okay, so these findings are pretty fascinating, but they lead to an equally important question. How can we trust them? How do we know all this research was done responsibly? Well, that brings us to the blueprint, the set of non-negotiable ethical rules that form the absolute foundation of all legitimate human research.
Now, these rules weren't just invented out of thin air. They were born from some really painful, really dark chapters in history. Horrific experiments that came to light during the Nuremberg trials after World War II forced the global community to act. This timeline shows how that response evolved, creating this powerful framework with one primary goal: to protect human beings who participate in research.
So here's the bottom line. Every single study, including the brain scan studies we just looked at, must follow these core principles. Researchers have to get informed consent. They have to make sure the potential benefits of the study outweigh any risks. They have to be fair in who they include. And, critically, they have to get approval from an independent ethics committee. This is absolutely non-negotiable.
And what happens when those rules are broken? Well, it's called research misconduct. And this is the official definition. It's making stuff up, changing data, or stealing ideas. It is the ultimate betrayal of the scientific process, and it has really serious consequences. This ethical firewall is what separates real science from pseudoscience.
So let's move to our final step. We have a finding, it's scientifically sound, it's ethically approved. That's great, but it's totally useless if it just stays locked away in a lab, right? The last part of our journey is all about making that knowledge accessible to everyone.
This whole movement was really sparked by a revolutionary idea:
This quote from the former director of the NIH, Harold Varmus, captures the vision perfectly. What if we could use the power of the internet to just tear down all the expensive paywalls and move scientific knowledge into a shared, public space for everyone to use?
And that vision led to the creation of PubMed Central. Now, it is crucial to understand the difference here. Think of it this way. PubMed is kind of like a library catalog. It tells you that an article exists. But PubMed Central, or PMC, that's the library itself. It's a free digital archive where you can actually read the full article, not just the little summary.
So how does a study like one of the ones on ADHD make this final leap? Well, this is the path. Research that's funded by taxpayers gets published. Then, by law, a copy of that paper has to be deposited in PubMed Central. And the result? Within a year, it's totally free for any doctor, any patient, any student, or just any curious citizen to read. This is science returned to the public that paid for it.
All right, so we followed this path all the way from a simple question about the brain, through the lab, past the ethics board, and into a public digital library. So after all that, what's the big takeaway? Why does this whole journey even matter?
Here's the ultimate takeaway. Real science isn't about a single flashy headline. It's a process. It's this whole system that is rigorous, that is ethical, and that is, more and more, completely open and transparent. That entire journey that we just followed, that's what builds trust. That's what turns a simple question into knowledge we can actually rely on.
And that brings us to our final thought. This journey we've just explored, from a question about ADHD all the way to an open access paper in PubMed Central, is now the standard for publicly funded research. So with this vast library of human knowledge now open to anyone with a browser, the real question is, what are we going to discover next?